Occupy Wall Street is a people-powered movement that began on September 17, 2011, at Liberty Square in Manhattan's financial district. It has spread to over 100 cities in the United States and invoked actions in over 1,500 cities worldwide. They unite to relay a message: to take legal actions on the world's financial crisis. We are now fighting back against the corrosive power of major banks and multinational corporations over the democratic process, and the role of Wall Street in creating an economic collapse that has caused the greatest recession in generations. The movement is spreading and shows no signs of slowing down. The intent and collective consciousness of the movement is finding itself to be a grand work in progress. It is time for Americans to rise up and take on the injustices perpetuated by Wall Street. It is time to take on the culture of greed and corporate domination. It is time to stop the influence that corporations wield in politics and create a more populist set of government priorities. We are the American people, and we are also the 99%. It is our right to demand more jobs. It is our right to demand our houses back. It is our right to demand a media that is not shattered nor filtered, but is raw and speaks the truth. You are the movement. You are the change. You are the 99%.
Hello, I'm Tom Hartman in Washington, D.C., and here's what's coming up tonight on The Big Picture. In 1944, years ago, former Vice President Henry Wallace warned about the threat corporatists, he called them American fascists, pose to our democracy. 71 years later, have his worst nightmares come true? I'll ask political scientist Peter Matthews in tonight's Conversations with Great Minds right after. For tonight's Conversations with Great Minds, I'm joined by one of America's leading progressive voices, political scientist Peter Matthews. You've written a book called Dollar Democracy, with liberty and justice for some. Tell us about the book. Why'd you decide to write it?
In every single area of our lives, policy areas, in healthcare, in the environment, in our food supply, in the Wall Street crash, in every one of those areas, you see the hand of dollar democracy, Tom, where $6.2 billion was raised and spent in 2012 alone on federal candidates. This year it'll even be more. And this started before super PACs. It started before Citizens United, when the biggest corporations bought both parties, including much of the Democratic Party, not all of it. We've got exceptions like Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and other grassroots people like Senator Wellstone who refused corporate money and won the right way. But the majority of Democrats and almost all the Republicans have been bought at the federal and state level, and our middle class is suffering, and so is our country, and we cannot survive without a middle class. You know, Aristotle said that, Jefferson said it, we all know it.
Is that what you mean when you say dollar democracy, basically democracy that's been bought and paid for?
It's been bought and paid for through the areas of election financing as well as lobbying. Don't forget the lobbying part. In many cases, lobbying consumes even more money where these corporations take legislators on vacation, working vacations to Hawaii, for example. That was done with our California state legislators by the energy and pharmaceutical and oil companies for vacation in Maui to discuss issues such as oil taxes or the lack thereof. So these lobbyists have bought and paid in election campaigning as well as lobbying our Congress and our elected leaders from city council on up. And I believe the way to turn it around is to go through several things: public financing of elections, as they have in Maine and Arizona, and other states have brought it on, as well as demanding a 28th Amendment of the Constitution that would remove corporate personhood and also say money is not speech and allow money to be campaigns to be regulated heavily.
For the last few years, I've had this sense that everything I learned as a kid about how America's government works is completely wrong. But I had no idea how bad things actually were until I saw this one graph. Researchers at Princeton University looked at more than 20 years worth of data to answer a pretty simple question: does the government represent the people? Now, this is what they found. This axis here represents public support for any given idea. On the left at 0% are ideas that not a single American wants. On the right at 100% are ideas that everyone supports. This axis represents the likelihood of Congress passing a law that reflects any of these ideas, from a 0 to a 100% chance. On this graph, an ideal republic would look like this. If 50% of the public supports an idea, there's a 50% chance of it becoming law. If 80% of us support something, there's an 80% chance. You get the idea. Now, most Americans would probably agree that, with a few exceptions, we should be as close to this ideal as possible. Unfortunately, the way America actually works doesn't even come close. Take an idea that nobody supports, literally nobody, and it has about a 30% chance of becoming federal law. Now, take an incredibly popular idea, the most popular idea this country has ever seen, and there's also about a 30% chance of it becoming law. This means that the number of American voters for or against any idea has no impact on the likelihood that Congress will make it law. Put another way, and I'm just going to quote the Princeton study directly here, the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. So if you've ever felt like your opinion doesn't matter and that the government doesn't really care what you think, well, you're right. But there's a catch. This flat line only accounts for the bottom 90% of income earners in America. Economic elites, business interests, people who can afford lobbyists, they get their own line. Look at how much closer their line is to the ideal. When they want something, the government is much more likely to do it. And when they don't, they have the power to completely block it from happening, no matter how much the rest of the country supports it. They get what they want, and guess who ends up paying for it? We pay for it with the most expensive healthcare in the world. We pay for it with a tax code that's a complete mess. We pay for it with internet that's slower and more expensive, with wasteful spending, a floundering education system, a catastrophic drug war, and 1 in 5 American children born into poverty. Almost every major issue we face as a nation can be traced back to this graph. How does this happen? Well, just follow the money. Right now, it's perfectly legal to buy political influence in America.